Hey, if you're like me and you write a lot of orchestral music with FL Studio, then probably sometimes you find yourself pulling your hair due to the limitations of this DAW when it comes to orchestral music. And in that case, I want to make this video today to help you out with that. This video is going to be kind of unscripted and very complicated and nerdy because this applies to the more expert composers. If you don't write music at a certain skill level, you may not have an issue with the mixer being limited to 125 tracks only, or you won't have an issue with the fact that setting negative track delays in FL Studio is very complicated and seems almost impossible. And you probably won't have an issue with the fact that you cannot save your instrument channels, including all the mixer effects you put on top of them, as a single preset that you can drag and drop in a project. But if you're an expert, you want all those things, and there aren't easy ways to get them, or so I thought. But recently I found a few, shortcuts here and there and tweaks and strategies specific to FL that allow me to do something similar and increase my workflow. So I want to talk about them today. Again, unscripted video, long, complex, not gonna be viral. 10 of you are gonna get value out of this. Thousands are gonna be thinking I'm talking about uninteresting things, but this is very important once you reach a certain level. So let's go. Negative track delay. What is that? Say, for example, you have this piano arpeggio right here. And you wanna play that in unison between like the piano patch and also a spiccato patch. So let's say you open an instance of Contact and you drag your favorite violin spiccato patch in it. I have Pacific Strings violin spiccato here loaded within Contact. And then you copy paste those notes onto the violin patch. If we play them together, we're gonna notice something funky here. Something is wrong. And what's wrong is that every note feels like doesn't really match the piano. It's playing a bit shifted. And what's happening is that actually Pacific Strings plays each note with a certain delay with it. So the way to sync them would be to take those notes from Pacific Strings, drag them to start slightly earlier than the piano notes, and now, magic. This is great. We basically fixed the delay. Why is there a delay within Pacific Strings? Well, every single orchestral library, for the most part, has some few milliseconds of silence before every single note you play, depending on the articulation you're using, because the people who make sample libraries want you to have access to the full information of the transients of the notes you play. So they want you to have a bit of silence before the note actually attacks, and then a bit of silence afterwards. So basically, when you press a note, if you're using a professional orchestral library, you're going to always have a bit of silence before the note is actually heard. And that's why we have that delay. It's actually to give us access to more information as composers and to have a more precise sound. But then that means that every single note we write, we have to shift it manually. And that sucks, because if you're a professional composer, you may find yourself writing music using hundreds of instrument patches. And for each of those patches, you're going to have hundreds of notes you write, meaning you have to nudge every single note manually. And each single patch is going to have a different attack time, so you have to nudge the notes manually differently depending on what library you're using, what articulation you're using, what instrument. That's infernal, because that means that you take so much longer to compose music just because you have to do these manual things all the time. And that defeats the idea of writing music fast. And other than that, if you find yourself putting so much effort into just copying a freaking piano arpeggio on a violin patch, damn, this costs you so much time that the sunken cost fallacy is gonna make your brain feel like this arpeggio has to be kept like a freaking precious treasure, because you spend so much time making it sound right at such a fundamental level that if you find yourself thinking, oh, it doesn't work for the track, part of your brain is gonna feel like, no, I don't wanna throw it away because I spent so much time just adjusting every single note. And that's bad, because when you write music, you want to be able to just throw stuff away very quickly, because in order to create, we need to destruct sometimes, right? So getting precious about our ideas is counterproductive. So how do we solve this issue? We solve it by setting negative track delays. Now, if you're using a DAW like Cubase, you can tell Cubase for every single VST track or MIDI track, you can set a specific amount of milliseconds of negative or positive delay, meaning I could tell Cubase, hey, I want you to play every single note within the spiccato patch on Pacific Strings. I want you to play every single note 80 milliseconds before. So basically I can have this setting and I set it like that, and then I leave the notes exactly as they are, and Cubase interprets them like this without me having to move them around. This means that I can just copy paste the notes and they're gonna sound in time, in line with everything else, without me having to actually work for it manually. Now, this is a thing you can actually do within FL Studio as well, to be fair. The way to do it then dives into another problem, which is the mixer. In order for me to set a negative track delay for this contact patch, I can link it to a mixer track like this. And now the signal goes here, right? And then in the mixer, I can go down right here, and this is the area where you can set the negative track delay. So you click and set it in milliseconds, and I can tell it, put a negative delay of 80 milliseconds. And now the audio is gonna be basically be playing a bit earlier, 80 milliseconds earlier, in fact. So it syncs with the piano. Because FL Studio knows that every single signal that goes through this mixer track, which is the mixer track of the violin, patch, has to be shifted to be played 80 milliseconds earlier. That's great. Problem solved. But once again, if you are an expert composer, you may find yourself composing music with more than 125 instrument patches sometimes. And if you can only use 125 mixer tracks, that means that you can only set the negative track delay for 125 instruments. And if you do, the entire mixer is going to be used. You cannot even do like subgroups anymore. That's just counterproductive. So you either have to like create different project file for different instrument families, or you have to hope to God that you don't reach 125 instruments in your track, right? Which was my approach for the most part. And that, without knowing, I was basically limiting the amount of instruments I was using in the track, because I knew that if I went too far, I couldn't do the negative track delays anymore. So that was not very nice. I eventually decided I need to find a way to set the negative track delays without the mixer, because I don't want to be limited by the amount of 125 tracks. I want to be able to set the negative track delays for a lot of instruments if I want to. And also another thing I wanted is I want to be able to set the negative track delay within, a contact instance. And then I want to be able to recall that contact instance with the negative track delay information baked into another project file in one click. I don't want the situation where I have to, on every single track I write, I have to open a contact instance and then I have to figure out what the negative delay is, connect it to the mixer and set it manually every single time. Because again, if I spend so much time just opening an instrument in a project file, that means that my brain is gonna be like, well, you spent so much time opening it and setting it up, now you gotta use it. And so my creativity is limited because I have, again, the sunk cost fallacy, which exists because FL Studio is quite limited in the way it allows you to deal with negative track delays. There's actually another way to do this, which allows you to kind of set the negative track delay within the channel itself without linking it to the mixer. You can go here in the wrapper settings, and then in the info, you can set the delay within here. But this is kind of wonky because sometimes it may read, like you can tell him, oh, I want this contact instance to play with 80 milliseconds, delay, pre-delay, or negative delay. It will do that. It will actually follow that. But sometimes it starts to spread this information to every other contact instance, and that's kind of like risky. So I'd rather not touch this. Even though there is a way to do it, I'd rather not touch this. I found another way that I find more effective that allows me to set negative track delay without touching my mixer, and in a way that I can save as a preset and just slam it in other project files easily. That way is the saving grace of FL Studio. It's called Patcher. It's this plugin, which basically allows you to build a circuit of plugins within a single instrument track. Now, once again, this is real expert shit. You may be completely lost at this point. It's only gonna get more complex from here. But maybe in the future, I'm gonna make a video explaining this for more beginner composers. But I wanted to make this video for the expert composers who are struggling with this shit, because man, I struggled with this for a long time. I thought there was no solution, and then I spent several amounts of months figuring this shit out. And now that I found an answer, I want to share it, hoping that I can help people, and hoping that maybe if people have more advice, we can uncover better approaches together. But say you want to set the negative track delay in a channel. You open Patcher. What you want to do is open an instance of Contact within Patcher. And you obviously, this blue thing is the MIDI signal that goes from FL Studio into Patcher. You link it to Contact. You link the audio of Contact to the output of Patcher that goes back to FL Studio. So basically, now that it's connected like this, that means that every MIDI note that goes within this Patcher channel goes inside here, goes to Contact, gets processed, the audio gets sent to Patcher again. The cool thing about Patcher is that you can build circuits with plugins. And there's a plugin that allows you to set negative track delay with audio. And that plugin is a freebie called -delay. It's a VST3. I'll leave a link to it in the description of this video. What I do is I open -delay and then I link it to the Contact audio output. And then the output of a -delay is going to go to FL Studio. That means that the audio signal from Contact travel inside -delay. And then in -delay, I can either let it play slightly earlier by moving this knob backwards or slightly later by moving it, forwards. And then the audio of -delay gets sent to FL Studio. That is one way to set your negative track delay within Patcher. The cool thing is that, other than have it set like this, I can also save this as a preset and I can call it, I don't know, Violin 1 Pacific negative. And I can close it. And if I want to reopen that patch of violins from Pacific Strings, which includes the negative track delay information, all I have to do is track that preset and drag it within FL Studio, and it's gonna have the negative delay information saved and the legato patch saved. So this is basically a container that contains Contact and the associated negative delay audio effects. This is not a MIDI negative track delay, but it kind of works exactly like it because it will read the audio earlier. The way it does this is basically by creating a buffer. So if I set this to -400 milliseconds, the audio buffer within the entire project is going to be increased by 400 milliseconds so that the FL Studio processes everything 400 milliseconds before you hear it, and then it's going to basically, let the violins play at the start of the buffer before everything else. Now, that's all well and cool if you're only using one articulation per Contact instance. But say, for example, that you're like me, and you like to compose music linking the different MIDI tracks in one channel to different articulations. The way in which you do this, obviously, is by opening multiple patches within your Contact instrument and setting these patches to different MIDI channels. So let's open that Contact containing the legato sustains from Pacific Strings. I'm going to set the MIDI channel of the legato to channel 1, and then I'm going to open the violin spiccatos within the same instance, and I'm going to set the violin spiccatos to channel 9. Now what happens is when I play notes using the color green that is connected to channel 1, they're going to be legato, and if I play notes with this pink channel 9, they're going to be spiccatos. The problem is the legato patch has a different amount of silence before each note compared to the spiccato patch, meaning the negative track delay that I set on the legato patch should be longer than the negative track delay I set for the spiccato patch. But I only have one instance of -delay here. So both the legato patch and the spiccato patch are going to have this level of negative track delay. So how do I solve this? This is one thing that I like about -delay and FL Studio. Within Patcher, I can do a thing like this. I can set Contact to send the audio of the legato to output 1 and output 2 here in the settings. Then I go here in the wrapper, I go on processing, and I click automate outputs. So that means that every single output within Contact is going to be sent to a different output outside of the wrapper. So to explain it shortly, the legato patch is going to play out of this, yellow wire here. But the spiccato patch, if I select it and play some notes, you're not going to hear it anymore. It's because it doesn't go to the first wire anymore. I have to activate another wire within Patcher, another output outside of this wrapper. The way to do this is right-click this, go on Outputs, Audio, and activate the second one. And now, if I create another minus delay, I can send the second output, which is the output containing the signal from the spiccato, to the second minus delay. I can rename it minus delay spiccato, and this will be minus delay legato. And then I can send the second minus delay back to FL Studio. And now, basically, this minus delay is going to govern the negative track delay of the legato sound or the legato audio channel, audio track. Well, this one is going to govern the negative delay of the spiccato. And I can set them differently, essentially. So I have two different negative track delay amounts for two different articulations, which are both playing from one channel, and they play based on the MIDI track that I select. This is freaking cool, because then it means that I can, again, save this as its own patch, and then I can recall this within any project in one click. In fact, I have here like a folder explorer containing several patcher instances that I made for each of the orchestral instruments I use for the most part. And say, for example, I have an empty project file and I want to recall an instance of Contact that contains every single articulation from the violin 1 patches of Pacific strings. I'll just type violin 1 Pacific arts. That's how I called it. I just drag it in, and there it is. This is an instance of Patcher containing a Contact plugin that has all the different violin, articulations on different MIDI channels, and each of these outputs corresponds to a different articulation. Each of them is going to a different minus delay patch, which then will go to this volume knob, which then will go to FL Studio. So now, not only do I have like each articulation loaded, legato, sustain, marcato, spiccato, tremolo, and whatever, but they each come with a loaded negative delay setting, which I didn't have to reset manually because it's already saved within the preset. You see here, there's a mess of wires like yellow, red, this blue ones here or whatever. It looks quite messy. The idea behind this is that I created an interface that allows me to tweak the MIDI CCs within every one of these separate patches with these knobs. So basically, when I move this mod wheel here, it's going to alter the mod wheel parameter of every single patch within this Contact instance. Same for the expression, the volume, the vibrato, which is CC number 2. This is CC number 60, I think. I also kind of created these controllers here to govern the mic positions of every single patch. So, for example, this is the close mic position. I can remove it entirely by pressing this. And now we only hear the AB. I can remove this, and now this is basically bypassed. There's no sound coming out of this. I should probably make another tutorial to do this, to explain you how I set this up, but I'm going to try to run it through you very quickly. Within Patcher, you can basically create connections to parameters of your VSTs by right-clicking into the VST, going on Inputs, Parameters, and then you have all the parameters available within that VST instance. In this case, I have all the parameters of my Contact instruments within this Contact instance. And at the end, I have every VST has the MIDI CC parameters, which you can activate by right-clicking or left-clicking. I activated CC 1, 2, 7, 11, 59, up to 63, and then others here. Once you activate them, I'm going to activate the XCC just to show you what it looks like. I'm going to activate CC number 52. Once I activate CC number 52, I'm going to see it as a red dot here. Like if you see these red dots, some of them are connected, some are not. So if I hover on this, the FL Studio helper here tells you CC number 52. Now, say I want to create a knob that governs CC number 52. I go here on the surface, and then I right click here outside of the controller I created, and I click on knob, select the default knob, and basically Patcher is gonna give me a knob here. You can basically use it to your liking. You can set it however you like, and you are gonna see it outside of your surface, this is the surface controller. Those are all the controllers from the surface, and I'm gonna give a name to that knob so I don't get confused. I'm gonna call it new knob. And now in the surface, I will find new knob, and if I see the helper on top left tells me this is new knob. This is the dot that relates to new knob. If I left click it and drag it to controller 52, now if I move this, this knob amount is going to be sent to CC number 52 within contact. That means that now within contact, I can tell contact to, say for example, I want to control the AB mic within Pacific Strings with CC number 52. I right click the AB mic, click on Learn MIDI CC Automation, and then I move the knob that corresponds to CC number 52. And now what happened is this knob sends CC number 52 information to contact, and contact received that. And because I had Learn MIDI CC Automation activated, now contact knows that when I move CC number 52, he should move this knob within the MIDI channel 1. I basically did this for every single, mic position within every single one of these patches. And I linked the closed mic volume to this slider, which is linked to, I don't recall what CC I linked the closed slider to. It's linked to CC 77. So now when I move this, it moves CC 77, and because I learned, or I taught contact to interpret it as move this knob on every single patch is going to be controlled by this slider. That's a very convoluted thing to explain, and explain very shortly and badly, but that's what I did. Now, there is actually a problem with patcher and MIDI CC linking, which I have not shown you, which is this. In actuality, when you move or tweak a MIDI CC through a slider within patcher and through a connection like I showed you, that MIDI CC information is only going to be sent to MIDI channel 1. And if you open, your contact instruments in the way I showed here, where every articulation is set to a different MIDI channel, that means that the MIDI CC information is only going to reach one articulation, the one set on channel 1. It will not technically reach stuff that is on channel 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, blah, blah, blah. In fact, let me show you what happens. Say, for example, you have an instrument on MIDI channel number 2. You have the sustains here, channel number 2, and you click Learn MIDI CC. You move the slider that corresponds to CC 77, but it doesn't move anymore. Why? Well, as I said, it only sends the value to MIDI channel number 1. So when you move the slider, it won't affect MIDI channel 2. That is a problem, of course, because it means actually we cannot use different MIDI channels in patcher, because then we can't use MIDI CCs. This comes to bite you in the ass if you, like me, want to write with different articulations or different MIDI tracks. And one way to solve this, though, is by using contact scripting. If you're using contact, you can go here on KSP. And I wrote a script in the contact script language that basically takes every MIDI CC information that is sent to the MIDI channel 1 and repeats it to all the other MIDI channels up to channel 64, which is a bit unnecessary because I mostly use 16 channels. But anyway, this script I wrote will repeat the MIDI CC 1, 2, 11, 7, 59, 60, all the MIDI CC I use. And I'll write it in the comments down below so you can copy paste it within your contact script by going in KSP, you go on edit, and then you can just paste it there, click apply. And once you have the script inside your contact, what's going to happen is, again, every single MIDI CC that is sent to the MIDI channel 1 is going to be sent automatically to every other channel. So finally, you will get the ability to, connect the module to all of this at once. So connect every MIDI CC to all of these at once. So, you have the freedom to set this however you like. Personally, that's how I set it. I created this surface. I have my logic for it. You can create whatever surface you like with whatever controls you like, depending on your own workflow. But again, the cool thing about this is that I set this once, I saved it as a preset, and now that's it. Every single time I want to open all the articulations of Pacific Strings Violin 1 with the negative track delays already set for each articulation and with the MIDI CCs set and everything, I just drag this preset into FL Studio and that's it. That's easily solved. This is a bit more advanced than how you would normally have it. I also have a new surface page where I basically set the negative delays with these knobs for each of the contact instances. And the way I made it is, again, I went on the negative delay, the minus delay plugin. I activated the delay parameter as an input here. I created a knob in the surface, the second surface I created here, and the knob is connected to the delay. So basically, when I move this, it will move the delay. And I set it in a way that moves it only negatively. As you see, it just goes backwards, doesn't go forwards, because I'm just going to use it as a negative track delay. The way in which I did that, again, very convoluted, is by using what is called a FL Studio formula controller, which this is advanced territory that I won't dive into, but it's a thing that allows you to link parameters to it and then write a formula that governs those parameters. And the formula I wrote is sort of like allowing me to read the data from this knob and then interpret it only in reverse from halfway through. So it goes from 0.5 all the way to 0. And that's why the negative track delay plugin only reads that knob negatively, because it goes from 0.5, which is 0 in the plugin, to 0, which is minus 400 in the plugin. Again, very complex, very unnecessary, because to be fair, you can just set this manually and leave it like that. I personally like the idea, I'm a control freak, so I personally like the idea of having a patcher page that allows me to reset the negative delays if I want to, but again, not necessary. Formula controller is also what I used in order to create these switches here that will basically bypass the what are they called? The microphones within my contact patch. Now, the other cool thing about using patcher is that, say, for example, you are somebody that has a specific EQ profile for each specific instrument you use. Maybe you EQ your Pacific Strings violins in a very specific way in every single track you make. Well, within Patcher, again, you can basically connect plugins to each other. And I can basically, after making all this mess of negative delays and contact, I can add a FabFilter Pro plugin at the very end of my chain, which is gonna affect all the signal that comes out of this patcher. And I can basically, like, I don't know, draw this curve and whatever, make this boost here on the highs and remove the lows here. So basically now every single articulation that is contained within this single patcher instance goes through this EQ. I'm gonna increase it drastically to make it obvious, or this, you know? And if I want to, I'm the type of person who uses this sort of curve every single time my, Pacific string violins. I can just, save a patcher instance that contains this EQ. And then every time I load that patcher instance, it's going to contain not just the negative tactile information, the MIDI CCs, but it's also going to contain the EQ. And, if you're a psycho like me and you want to have a knob that basically allows you to, govern this EQ curve gain, then again, you can do it. You can right click here, go on the inputs, go on parameter. I'll use last tweaked, which is the gain that I just tweaked. I'll create a knob for the gain here, whatever, high gain. And then I'll go here on the surface, connect this there. And now I can, by moving this, what I'm doing is I'm actually moving that gain. So, if I'm the type of person who wants to always have the freedom to just add a sparkle to my high violins by using a knob, there, I set it in my patcher. It's connected to FabFilter Pro Q. It's done. I can save this and I can reload it like this. So on every track I write, I have this knob which I can then use, and I can create automations to it within my piano roll. I can create automations to it as actual automations, in my playlist here. That's super easy. It makes super easy to compose with this patch in the way I personally like to compose with it. And honestly, with Patcher, the sky is the limit. The only problem is, if you start to add too many plugins within every single Patcher instance you use, you can run into a situation where you exhaust the amount of graphical resources within FL Studio, meaning FL Studio will crash because there's just too many plugins loaded. That's something I ran into. I made a Patcher preset that was fucking insane for every single instrument I used, and it used so many plugins that it allowed me to do so many things, but then my FL started to get very slow, and it crashed a lot once I opened around 60 Patcher instances, meaning 60 plugins, or rather 60 Contact plugins. And that basically destroyed my workflow. So I basically had to strip down my Patcher of a lot of plugins. Even like the idea of using 16 different minus delay plugins costs a substantial amount of graphical resources for FL Studio. So I still find myself running into problems if my projects get too big, but I think I can use around. I feel like I'm forgetting something. Oh yeah, I showed you how to send multiple MIDI CC information to different MIDI tracks simultaneously through Patcher by using the Contact scripting. But say, for example, you are not using Contact and you're using Sine. Like Sine is the Sine player is the sampler from Orchestral Tools, which is a company I freaking love. They have so many incredible orchestral libraries. And unfortunately, Sine does not have a scripting panel, to my knowledge, that allows you to just do whatever you want, like Contact does. So in this case, let me open a sustain patch and a tremolo patch. Sustain is on channel 1 and tremolo is channel 2. And I want to link the mod wheel to this, so I'll activate MIDI CC 1 here, go on the mod wheel, connect it. Now, if I play the, channel 1, which is the sustain, the mod wheel responds, but if I play channel 2, which is tremolo, it will not. It doesn't change. Again, the solution in Contact is to activate scripting. Here, I can't do it. But one thing I discovered only recently is that FL Studio can save the day. So there's a plugin called MIDI Out. You open the MIDI Out. The MIDI Out is this plugin that allows you to have 8 pages of knobs you can set. And these knobs can control many things, including MIDI CCs. The cool thing is you can send MIDI CCs to different channels with the MIDI Out. So I can basically, if I right click here, I set configure, and I say this is mod wheel 1, so I'm going to call it mod 1. Modulation wheel is controller number 1, so I set CC number 1. You can set the range, and then you can set the channel, so I can tell the MIDI Out to send this to channel 1. I can then do another mod wheel. I'm going to call it mod 2, controller 1, and I can send it to channel 2. And that is very cool. Now, if I link this MIDI Out, the MIDI output of it, to Sine Player, and I go on Sine Player, and I set it with the same port as the MIDI Out. This is very important. So I have to go here, and on the input port I put put 0. Now that I set it like this, that means that this mod 1, for example, the information that comes out of this is going to be sent to the Sine Player on port 0, channel 1. because Sign Player is reading port 0, it will then interpret the information on channel 1, which is the violin sustain, meaning this will send information to the mod wheel on the sustain patch. Mod 2, in the same way, is gonna send the mod wheel information to the channel 2 on port 0. So that's cool. Now I solved the issue. I can control the mod wheel on different MIDI channels. However, there's a problem. I don't want to create different MIDI curves for each different MIDI channel independently, because that makes my process so much longer. So what you can actually do is to activate these knobs within the MIDI out within Patcher as output. So you click this as input, sorry. So you click this, right click, activate, right click, activate, and we got these two small red dots, which are saying that we can connect one of our knobs from the Patcher surface to these knobs within MIDI controller. And so I will link the mod wheel knob from my surface to both mod wheel knobs within the MIDI controller. And that means that when I move this mod from the surface, it will move both mod wheel knobs in the MIDI controller, which are then sent to Sign Player. And so now, irrespective of, which articulation I'm using, the modulation knob on my surface is gonna trigger or tweak the modulation wheel on MIDI channel 1 and MIDI channel 2. So these are sort of like repeaters in a way. And the thing you want to do is obviously create as many as you need. So I have this preset here that repeats the modulation wheel 16 times, and then it repeats the expression 16 times as well. I'm going to link this one in the description as well. And I can create as many of these as I want until I get to page number 8. And if you were to get to page number 8, you can create another MIDI out and then create another 8 pages of, controllers, and then send them to the Sign Player in the same exact way. This approach would work also with Contact. It works with Omnisphere. It works, honestly, with any sampler or VST you may need, as long as you, set it correctly, meaning like you have to set the input port within your VST and blah, blah. So all of that allows you to transcend, the limits of 125 mixer tracks, because you don't need to use them anymore for the MIDI track, for the negative track delays. You don't even need to use the mixer tracks for, the effects you want to put in onto your orchestral instruments, because you can even just add them from within Patcher. Obviously, using the mixer track is great, and it's always the best approach because it's more visual, it's easier to keep track of it and stuff. But this is basically an extension of that. If this seems interesting to you, I invite you to check out Patcher. I hope this helps some of you who are dealing with this situation. The sad part of all this stuff is that I tried to write in FL Studio forums to notify, the development team about these issues and asking them if there's an easy way to solve them, if they can implement something in FL Studio that compares to other DAWs like Cubase, which make this process, all these processes way less tedious. But unfortunately, despite the fact that the team is very talented, they're also extremely busy with priorities that unfortunately don't necessarily involve the interests of orchestral composers. At least we are not their number one priority. Let's put it like that. Because every single time people have complained about, hey, there's no way to send negative track delays easily, or, the mixer tracks are too slim, I've read answers and responses from the support staff saying stuff like, oh, but nobody needs that feature. Or most producers who use FL Studio don't go beyond 125 tracks, so we're not prioritizing that a lot. We're working on it, but it will come when it comes. And the answer is always like, we're doing this, but it's not like people need it urgently, which it may be the case. I fucking need it urgently. I really need that stuff. Thank God the Patcher exists and I figured out a way to use it like this. Still not as ideal as a Cubase, but the problem is this, because they don't prioritize composers, because their user base doesn't involve as many of us, it creates this situation where composers who are looking into getting a DAW will not consider FL Studio, because FL Studio doesn't have the features that composers have. At least it doesn't have all the features we have, and they're not ergonomically implemented in the DAW. And so it creates a situation where, because there's no features, the composers don't take FL Studio seriously, but because composers don't take FL Studio seriously, the developers are not going to make those features as readily available as features for, I don't know, rap or electronic music producers. And that's very sad, because FL Studio is an extremely powerful DAW. It has some of the most amazing workflow I've seen in terms of like the piano roll and how fast you can compose, even if you don't play every note from the piano. And then it falls on stuff like this. And the devs, again, they're talented, they're working on stuff hard all the time, but they're not putting us on a very high priority list. And that's unfortunate. So yeah, I hope this video helps out those of you who are stuck in this situation. Yeah, I'm rambling at this point. I may make another video about Patcher later in the future, once I discover more things about it. But if you also know some more things that I haven't applied or you haven't seen me do, or if you have more advices about how to deal with this stuff, please let me know, because I'm still figuring this out. And as I find more answers, I will share them here openly, because, you know, I feel sort of responsible for certain producers and composers who picked up FL Studio because they saw how I use it on my channel. And now that I find myself at the bottleneck and I find the limitations, I am like, oh my God, people are going to run into this as well. And some of the people picked up this DAW because they saw me use it. And now I'm partly responsible for them having headaches with a limited amount of mixer tracks. So I hope this video helps out those of you who are in the situation. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye.